I still remember the day Ava was born. Her tiny fingers, her soft cries, and how she clung to my pinky like I was her entire world. My daughter, Emily, was only 23 at the time and overwhelmed with life, chasing a career, managing a chaotic marriage, and trying to keep her head above water. Naturally, the responsibility of raising Ava fell to me, and I didn't complain. Not once. I was already in my late 50s then, retired early from my job as a school librarian, and had just started dreaming of peaceful mornings and evening tea with mystery novels. But Ava changed everything, and I welcomed the change. My quiet house became alive again, with baby laughter, scattered toys, and lullabies hummed late into the night. She brought colour to the faded walls and purpose to my days. As the years passed, Ava became more than just a granddaughter. She became my best friend, my shadow, my pride. Every scraped knee, every school project, every heartbreak, she came running to me. I cooked her favourite meals, braided her hair before school, and sewed little notes into her lunchboxes. I remember staying up all night to help her build a cardboard solar system in 5th grade because she wanted it to be the biggest one in class. It won first place. She hugged me so tightly that day and whispered, "You're the best, Grandma." That was all I ever needed. I never counted what I gave her, never tallied the sacrifices. I dipped into my savings to pay for her ballet lessons when Emily and her husband couldn't. I quietly helped with her college applications and even paid part of her tuition with the money I had set aside for home renovations. No one asked me to. I did it because I loved her, deeply, unconditionally. Even when Ava moved out after college and got busy with her adult life, she still called every Sunday. Sometimes the calls were short, sometimes long, but she always called, and those calls were the highlight of my week. When she told me about Mason, the man she met through work, I could hear the sparkle in her voice. She sounded happy, and that made me happy too. Then came the engagement. She dropped by one evening, a surprise visit, her hand glittering with a diamond ring. She squealed and hugged me tight, saying, "Grandma, I'm getting married. Can you believe it?" My eyes welled up. I cupped her face and said, "Of course I can. You deserve all the love in the world, sweetheart." From that moment on, I wanted to make her big day as magical as I could. I wasn't rich, but I still had a small nest egg tucked away, so I did something I didn't even tell her about. I visited a charming garden venue on the outskirts of town, the same one Ava had once admired during a wedding we attended years ago. I paid the deposit and reserved it for her bridal shower. The space had a blooming rose arch, fairy lights, and a small waterfall at the back. It was perfect. Elegant, dreamy, just like her Pinterest boards. I planned to surprise her with it closer to the date, maybe hand her a wrapped-up envelope with the confirmation inside. I imagined her reaction, how she'd gasp, hug me, maybe even cry. That moment was going to be my gift to her. Little did I know, the only tears shed would be mine. The first red flag came with the bridal shower invitations. One lazy afternoon, I was sipping chamomile tea and sorting through the mail when I noticed a pale pink envelope addressed to Emily. Curious, I flipped through the rest, expecting one for me. There wasn't any. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe Ava was delivering mine by hand. Maybe she wanted to surprise me. After all, I was still her grandma, her second mother in every way that mattered. I waited for a call, a visit, a text, but none came. 3 days later, I saw the invitation again, lying half open on Emily's coffee table during one of my weekly visits. I casually picked it up, admiring the floral design. That's when Emily blurted too quickly, "Oh, you're not invited, Mum." I froze. "What do you mean?" She sighed, avoiding my eyes. It's just that Ava and her friends have a theme going. They're going for something really modern, kind of Instagram chic. You know how these girls are. She thought it might feel weird for you." "Weird?" My voice cracked. "Why would it be weird for me to be at my granddaughter's bridal shower?" Emily winced. She said you wouldn't fit the aesthetic." The words slapped me harder than any insult ever could. Not invited because I didn't match the decor, because I didn't wear enough beige or pose well for selfies. For the first time in decades, I felt small, insignificant. I tried to hold it together. I forced a smile, told Emily I understood, and left early, claiming a headache. But the moment I got into my car, my hands trembled on the steering wheel. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring blankly ahead, while the truth washed over me. I wasn't needed anymore. Not really. Not as a caregiver. Not as a source of comfort. And now, not even as a guest. But worse than the exclusion was the realization that Ava hadn't even had the decency to tell me herself. After all I had done, for her future, she couldn't look me in the eye and say I didn't belong. I drove home in silence that day. No music, no tears, just a heavy, suffocating quiet. When I got back, I walked straight to the drawer where I'd kept the confirmation for the bridal shower venue. I stared at the receipt, the neat little line showing the $3,000 deposit I'd paid from my pension account. My hands shook, not with sadness this time, but with something else. Resolve. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, lit only by the overhead bulb, and drafted an email to the venue. Kindly cancel the reservation for Ava H on the 23rd. I will not be needing the space anymore. I paused, hovered over the keyboard and added one more line. No refund required. Then I hit send. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The fallout was quiet at first. Ava didn't even realize the venue had been cancelled until a week later. Apparently, she and her friends had been obsessing over flower arrangements and champagne options without checking in with the actual booking. I wasn't surprised. That generation has a way of assuming everything will fall into place magically, especially when someone else has always done the groundwork for them. The first sign of trouble came through Emily. She called me in the middle of the afternoon, voice tight and urgent. "Mom, did you cancel the bridal shower venue?" I kept my voice calm. "Yes." Silence. "You didn't even say anything? Why would you?" "She didn't invite me, Emily," I said, simply. "I figured there was no point in holding an event I wasn't welcome at." Emily exhaled hard. "Mom, I didn't think it would come to this." "No, you didn't think at all," I said, still calm. "You've been so busy protecting her feelings that you forgot about mine." "She's devastated," Emily said, softer now. "So was I." Another pause. "Couldn't you have just let it go?" I laughed gently, not unkindly. Let it go? Like I let go of my time, my money, my self-respect. All for a girl who now thinks I'm too basic to show up in her curated bridal photos? No, sweetheart. I've let enough go. That night, Ava messaged me. Not a phone call, not a visit. Just a cold, typed-out message that read, "You're being petty and vindictive. I never said you weren't invited. I just wanted things to be nice." I stared at the screen for a while, then replied with one sentence. "You should have thought about nice before choosing cruelty over kindness." She didn't reply, but I knew my silence would speak louder than anything else. For the next few days, the house was quiet again. Emily tiptoed around, not daring to bring it up. I went about my usual routines, my knitting, my reading, my long walks. But my mind kept circling back to one truth. Respect can't be demanded. It has to be taught. And sometimes, the lesson comes in the form of loss. I didn't cancel that venue out of revenge. I did it to reclaim a piece of myself, a part of me that had been chipped away over the years by polite neglect and emotional hand-me-downs. I wasn't a bitter old woman. I was a grandmother who'd had enough. And Ava, she had just begun to learn that actions have consequences, even the ones dressed in pastel and gold foil. By the end of the week, the ripple effect of my decision had reached nearly every corner of the family. Cousins were whispering, aunts were texting Emily with thinly veiled concern, and I started noticing that fewer people smiled at me during church. Ava, it seemed, had launched her version of the story far and wide. The dramatic tale of her bitter grandmother who ruined her bridal shower out of jealousy. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. Let them talk. The truth doesn't need a press release. It needs time. And time was on my side. But the one thing that did sting was Emily's growing distance. She wasn't angry exactly, but her silence was sharp. She moved around the house like she was scared of bumping into me, like I was this fragile vase about to shatter. One night, I walked into the kitchen to find her staring into the fridge, unmoving. "You don't have to treat me like I'm a grenade, Emily," I said softly. She jumped. "I'm not." "You are." She sighed, closed the fridge, and leaned against the counter. I don't know how to fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her. She had my eyes, tired, watchful eyes, but hers were fogged by guilt. "I don't want you to fix it," I said. "That's not your job anymore. You raised her. I raised you. I did what I could. Now she has to live with what she's done." Emily blinked, her voice cracking. "You loved planning that shower." I nodded. I did, until it stopped being about family and started being about status. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "She doesn't understand what she's done." "She will," I said, not bitterly, just truthfully. "Maybe not now, but one day." A few days later, Ava posted a photo on social media, her and her bridesmaids at a new location, a rooftop garden with string lights and champagne flutes. She looked radiant, posed, edited to perfection. And I noticed something. The smile didn't reach her eyes. For all the flowers and laughter and clinking glasses, there was a hollowness, a gap. She could replace a venue, but not what the venue stood for. Not the warmth, not the history, not the hands that had held her since she was born. And suddenly, I didn't feel hurt anymore. I felt sorry for her. Because one day, she might become a mother or a grandmother, and someone she loves might look at her like she's too basic. And in that moment, all the invitations in the world wouldn't matter. Respect would. The silence between us stretched on. Emily and I continued living under the same roof, but now we exchanged small words. "Good morning, good night, how was your day?" It wasn't cold, just cautious. I waited, not because I expected Ava to apologize, but because I had planted a lesson in the middle of all this mess. And eventually, seeds sprout. 2 weeks after the bridal shower took place, without me, without the warmth of our family traditions, I received a letter in the mail. Not a text, not an email. A real, handwritten letter in an envelope with Ava's name scribbled on the back. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside were 3 short lines. "Grandma, I didn't mean to hurt you, but I'm not sorry for choosing my own way. Ava." That was it. No thank you for the years of support. No acknowledgement of the venue I booked. No mention of the tears I quietly shed after being cast aside like an old chair that didn't match the decor. I placed the letter back in the envelope, slid it into my drawer, and locked it. Not out of spite, but because I needed to remind myself of something. Sometimes people don't grow until they've lost enough light to realize how dark they've become. Later that day, Emily found me out in the garden pruning the rose bushes. "She wrote to you, didn't she?" she asked gently. I nodded. Emily stood in silence for a moment. "She hasn't said anything to me. She's just pretending like everything's fine." "That's how people avoid guilt," I said. "They wear pride like a raincoat." "She's planning her wedding now. It's coming fast." I looked up from the roses. "Did she say if I'm invited?" Emily bit her lip. She said she wasn't sure. Said it might be better to keep things less complicated. Ah, there it was. The final nail. I stood and brushed dirt off my gloves. "Then I'll make things simple for her." That evening, I called my lawyer. When he answered, I told him calmly, "I want to make some changes to my will, and I want to put the old house up for sale, immediately." He hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "It's time." The house Ava and her fiancé were expecting to inherit, the same house I built with my husband brick by brick, was not going to be their prize anymore. If I was too basic to be part of their celebrations, then my sacrifices were too significant to be part of their future. And as I spoke to the realtor the next day, arranging photos and viewings, I felt a strange peace settle in. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was standing up for the girl I used to be. The girl who built a family from scratch and wasn't about to be tossed aside for glitter and hashtags. I didn't announce the sale. I didn't brag. But word travels fast in our town. A week later, I got a call. Avenue. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Grandma, are you selling the house?" "Yes," I replied calmly. "You didn't think to tell me?" "You didn't think to invite me to your shower," I said evenly. "We all make choices." There was silence on the other end. Then a furious, "You're doing this out of spite." "No," I replied. "I'm doing it out of self-respect." She hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I just sat there, the dial tone humming like a goodbye that was long overdue. The for sale sign went up the next morning. I watched from the kitchen window as the real estate agent staked it into the front yard like a flag marking new territory. I had to admit, it looked strange, out of place, almost unnatural, standing in front of the house that had held decades of birthdays, heartbreaks, and home-cooked dinners. But sometimes, strange is necessary. Emily came over later that day and stood beside me in silence as we looked out the window together. "She's going to explode when the listing hits the internet," she muttered. I didn't respond. My hands were wrapped around a cup of tea, warm and steady. Unlike Ava, I didn't make rash moves. I made decisions. And this one had been a long time coming. By nightfall, the online listing was live. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, custom kitchen, garden, a quiet neighborhood, and most importantly, an owner ready to move on. It didn't take long for Ava to come storming back into my life. Not through kindness, not through remorse, but through anger, entitlement, and disbelief. She showed up unannounced the next evening, slamming her car door and marching up the steps like a woman wronged. I opened the door before she could knock. "You're really selling the house?" she demanded, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I am. Are you insane?" "I've been many things," I replied calmly, "but never insane, just invisible, until now." She scoffed. "You can't do this. This house is supposed to be mine." "It was never promised," I corrected her. "You assumed. There's a difference." Her face turned red. "But what about the wedding? We were going to take pictures in the garden." I cut her off with a gentle raise of my hand. "You said I was too basic to attend your shower. That meant you didn't want me involved. So now I'm giving you what you wanted." Space. She clenched her jaw, tears forming in her eyes. But they weren't sorrowful. They were angry, furious. The kind that comes from realizing a door has closed and you can't kick it open. "You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." For years, I had held this family together with love, patience, and quiet forgiveness. But quiet doesn't mean weak, and patience doesn't mean blind. She turned without another word and stormed back to her car, tires screeching as she sped off into the night. As I closed the door, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, not exhausted, but spent, like I had finally put down the heavy basket I'd been carrying on my back for years. Later that week, offers on the house started coming in, generous ones. The family down the block expressed interest. They had twin girls and a newborn. The idea of that old house, filled with new laughter and fresh footsteps, made me smile. I accepted their offer. Ava didn't call again. Neither did her parents. Emily, though, stood by me. She even helped me pack, wrapping dishes in newspaper and placing old photo frames gently into boxes. "You're not just moving out," she said. "You're stepping forward." I smiled. That's the plan. When the day of the official sale came, I left a note in the mailbox for the new owners. "This house was built with love. May you fill it with more." 2 weeks later, I handed over the keys. The day was quiet, just the way I liked it. The sun was out, casting a golden warmth across the porch, and the garden smelled faintly of lavender. I took one last walk through each room, not in sadness, but in gratitude. Every wall held a memory, and every creak in the floorboards felt like a whispered goodbye. I didn't cry, not even when I closed the front door for the last time. Some endings don't require tears, just the courage to turn the page. Emily picked me up and drove me to my new home, a small cottage just outside the city, surrounded by trees and far from the noise of Ava's ambitions. It wasn't grand, but it was mine, bought outright with the money from the house sale. Clean, peaceful, and full of sunlight. And best of all, no one there ever made me feel basic. I decorated it slowly, not with the cold, modern aesthetic Ava obsessed over, but with warmth. Soft fabrics, hand-painted mugs, bookshelves filled with stories, and photos of people who still loved me exactly as I was. I planted fresh flowers in the garden, and every morning I brewed my tea by the window while birds sang their cheerful morning songs. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of old things, I found a photo of Ava as a little girl, smiling, her hair in pigtails, hugging me tightly with her tiny arms. For a moment, my heart ached. Where had that little girl gone? But I quickly folded the picture back and placed it in a drawer. Some things are better left in the past. Emily visited often. She brought groceries, helped with small repairs, and most importantly, kept me company. We laughed more in those weeks than I had in years. She even invited me to dinner with her parents, who welcomed me with open arms and genuine warmth. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, she turned to me and said, "You know, you could have just stayed quiet, let them walk all over you. But you didn't." I looked at her and smiled. Eventually, even a doormat realizes it can be rolled up and moved. She laughed. Life had changed, yes, but for once it felt like it was changing in the right direction. Ava did reach out eventually. A text message. Short, cold. "Did you really sell the house?" I didn't reply. A month later, I heard from a neighbour that Ava and her husband had been forced to delay their wedding plans. Without the free venue and support they expected from me, things were less perfect than she had imagined. I wasn't happy about their struggles, but I wasn't sad either. Actions have consequences. Mine just happened to come with a title deed. By autumn, my little cottage was fully settled. I joined a book club, made a few local friends, and even started painting again, something I hadn't done since my husband passed. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. And in the stillness of my new home, I realized something. Being discarded doesn't mean you're worthless. Sometimes, it just means you're finally free to write your own story, with no one else holding the pen. Winter rolled in gently that year, bringing with it soft snow and even softer moments. I was sipping hot cocoa by the fireplace, wrapped in my favorite knitted shawl, when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a delivery man holding a fancy white envelope with golden edges. "Special delivery," he said with a polite smile before handing it over. I raised an eyebrow. I wasn't expecting anything. Inside was a thick ivory card, elegantly scripted. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Ava and Mitchell." I stared at it in silence, rereading the lines as if they would make more sense the second time. The venue was listed as a modest country inn, not the luxurious space she had originally chosen. And at the bottom, written faintly in Ava's handwriting, were the words, "I hope you'll come." For a moment, I felt nothing, just stillness. Then, a quiet sadness crept in. Not because I wasn't going, but because this was all I meant to her now. A guest, not family, not her grandmother. Just another name on a white card to help fill seats. I set the card on the table and went back to my chair. Emily called later that evening, and I told her about the invitation. She was quiet for a while, then said, "If you want to go, I'll take you." But I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. I've already attended enough moments in her life where I wasn't truly welcome. I won't be background noise again. Instead, on the day of Ava's wedding, I had my own celebration. Emily brought over a cake, some flowers, and a few close friends I'd made in the community. We laughed, played cards, shared stories, and toasted to freedom, self-respect, and second chances. I didn't miss the sound of clinking champagne glasses or the flash of photographers. I didn't miss feeling invisible in a room full of people who never saw me. I had something far better now. Peace. Weeks later, I received another letter, this time handwritten, messier, full of crossed-out words and shaky thoughts. It was from Ava. She apologized, not just for the bridal shower, but for years of dismissive glances, cold comments, and treating me like an accessory she could hide away. She wrote about how things hadn't gone as planned, how marriage wasn't the magical fix she imagined, and how she now realized how alone she felt, even at her own wedding. "I miss the way your house smelled like vanilla and cinnamon," she wrote. "I miss your stories, your comfort, and the way you always made me feel safe even when I didn't deserve it." I folded the letter gently and placed it in my drawer, right next to the childhood photo of her in pigtails. I didn't call her back. Not yet. Forgiveness, I've learned, is a lot like healing. It can't be rushed. And sometimes it's not about going back. It's about moving forward, wiser and stronger. The house was gone. The venue was cancelled. But my life, it was finally mine. Spring arrived early, brushing everything with soft pastels and the scent of new beginnings. My garden came back to life, tulips pushing through the soil, the old plum tree budding with tiny blossoms. The world outside looked like hope, and for once, my heart matched the view. I hadn't replied to Ava's letter, not out of cruelty, but because I didn't owe her the kind of quick forgiveness she might have been expecting. Some wounds don't bleed on the outside, but they bruise something much deeper, and hers had bruised me where it mattered most, my place in her heart. Emily came over one afternoon carrying groceries and a tired smile. "She asks about you," she said gently, placing a bag of apples on the counter. "Let her ask," I replied. "She's not the same anymore," Emily added, almost defensively. "The wedding humbled her." "I hope so," I said. "But that change isn't for me. It's for her." Emily gave a sad little nod, then sat beside me at the table. "She wants to come visit." I looked out the window, where sunlight danced over my porch steps. "Tell her not yet." A week later, Ava showed up anyway. She knocked, softly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. When I opened the door, she stood there holding a bouquet of tulips, the same colour as the ones blooming in my yard. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. But she didn't speak right away. She just looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I stepped outside and sat on the porch. She followed without being invited. That alone told me she might have truly changed. She placed the flowers on the step and sat beside me. "I was so wrapped up in making everything look perfect," she said, voice trembling, "that I forgot the one person who always showed up without needing to be asked." I didn't interrupt. She kept talking. "I wanted to be proud of everything, but now I realize I was proud of all the wrong things." Silence settled between us like a soft blanket. Finally, I looked at her and said, "I don't need you to explain what you were trying to do. I lived it." She swallowed hard. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said honestly. "But I'm not rushing to forget either." She nodded, tears rolling freely now. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything, even what you took away." That part surprised me. "You taught me that love doesn't mean being a doormat," she added, "and that's something I never realized I was taking from you." We sat quietly after that. No dramatic reunion, no long embrace, just a mutual understanding. Forgiveness would come, but on my time, my terms. When she stood to leave, she turned back and said, "I hope one day you'll come visit my home, and this time, I promise, it will feel like yours too." Then she walked down the path and disappeared around the corner. I sat there long after she left, tulips at my feet, heart strangely calm, because I wasn't waiting for her anymore. She was finally chasing the woman she left behind. Months passed, quietly, like pages of a diary fluttering in the wind. Life found its rhythm again, and so did I. Ava visited a few more times, never unannounced again. Sometimes we just talked about the weather. Other times, we simply sipped tea in silence. She didn't push for closeness, and that was the first sign of true growth. She sent me pictures from her honeymoon. Nothing grand, just a cabin in the mountains. Simple. Peaceful. She said she'd thought of me when she saw the wildflowers growing on the hillside. One day, a letter arrived in the mail. A thick envelope, handwritten in Ava's slightly crooked cursive. I opened it slowly, expecting a card, or maybe another apology. Inside was something else. A contract. With a note paper-clipped to the front. "Grandma, I never said thank you for the bridal shower venue, or for everything else you did for me. I found out it was non-refundable, so I used what you paid towards something I hope will make you proud. I bought space at the local community centre, under your name. Every spring, they'll host a charity bridal brunch for women who can't afford their own weddings. It'll be called Marjorie's Table, because you always made room for everyone at yours. Ava. Tears came before I could stop them, not out of sadness, but something deeper. That strange mix of pride and grief and healing that only family can stir in you. Ava hadn't just changed. She'd understood. That meant more to me than any apology ever could. I attended the first Marjorie's Table event. Dozens of young women sat around a long, white-draped table, decorated with soft pinks and tiny golden details. They looked like joy, like hope, like the version of Ava I had always believed was somewhere inside her. Ava introduced me. "This is my grandmother," she said. "She didn't just raise me, she taught me what grace looks like, even when I didn't deserve it." There was applause, but I didn't hear it, because in that moment, all I could feel was a kind of peace I hadn't known I was waiting for. Later that night, she walked me to my car. "You still don't forgive me fully, do you?" she asked. I looked at her, not the child I raised, not the bride I missed, but the woman she'd finally become. "I'm getting there," I said. "One gracious step at a time." She nodded, slipping her arm around mine. "I'll keep walking with you then," she whispered. And for once, I let her lead the way.